At a family dinner, my daughter-in-law, Celeste, screamed, "What's it like being an old capitalist who's going to die alone?" My son, David, sat stunned, while my granddaughter, Lily, gripped her napkin in terror. I simply replied, "What's it like not receiving another penny from this old capitalist?" Her mask crumbled. My story begins tonight. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. The soft glow of the dining room chandelier usually brought a warmth to our family dinners, a comforting illusion of harmony. At 65, I, Eleanor, had cultivated this image carefully, nurturing what I believed was a loving family around me. My son, David, his wife, Celeste, and their daughter, Lily, were supposed to be the anchors of my golden years. Tonight, however, that illusion was about to shatter into a million irreparable pieces. We had just finished the main course, and a lull had fallen, a moment I'd mistaken for contentment. Suddenly, Celeste's voice, sharp and laced with a venom I had never heard directed at me so openly, cut through the quiet. Her eyes, usually so calculating, now gleamed with a raw, ugly malice. "What's it like?" she snarled, leaning forward, her knuckles white as she gripped the table. "Being an old capitalist who's going to die alone?" The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, like a cloud of poison. They were not merely an insult. They were a deliberate, brutal assault on my very existence, on the life I had built, and on the future I had envisioned with them. I felt a cold shock, a physical blow that robbed me of breath. My gaze flickered to David. My son, my only child, sat utterly frozen, his fork halfway to his plate. His eyes were wide, a deer-in-headlights stare, incapable of meeting mine, much less intervening. A heavy silence followed, amplifying Celeste's cruel words, making them echo in my ears. The disappointment was a bitter taste in my mouth, far worse than any culinary misstep. Then, I saw Lily. My 12-year-old granddaughter, usually so bright and chatty, was clutching her napkin tightly, her small knuckles white. Her eyes, so like David's, were wide with a terror that tore at my heart. She looked from her mother to me, a silent plea for the world to make sense again. Protecting her became my immediate, overwhelming priority, even as my own world was crumbling. A strange calm descended upon me, an icy clarity. The initial shock gave way to a chilling resolve. I looked directly at Celeste, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. "What's it like?" I retorted, each word deliberate. "A counterstrike. Not receiving another penny from this old capitalist." The words, though delivered softly, landed with the force of a hammer blow. I watched Celeste's face. The aggressive flush drained away, leaving her pale, her jaw slack. The mask of righteous indignation she so often wore slipped, revealing the stark, grasping fear beneath. It was the face of someone who had gambled and just realized they had lost everything. David, startled by my response, finally stirred. He glanced from Celeste's suddenly terrified expression to my own unyielding gaze. In his eyes, I saw not just shock, but a flicker of fear, and in that fear, a terrible truth solidified in my mind. He was afraid of me. Afraid of my reaction. It confirmed what I had instinctively suspected. This hadn't been an impulsive outburst. This had been a calculated attack, orchestrated, or at least condoned, by both of them. Suddenly, years of seemingly innocuous comments, of Celeste's endless social justice sermons, of her subtle digs at my wealth, coalesced into a horrifying pattern. Every impassioned speech about inequality, every lecture on ethical investments, every critique of capitalism, all of it had been a carefully constructed facade, a performance designed to extract more, to justify her sense of entitlement to my money. The warmth I had felt for them, the love I had poured into nurturing our family, felt like a fool's gold, a glittering illusion that had just vanished, leaving behind only the cold, hard rock of betrayal. "Mom, Celeste, please," David stammered, his voice weak, a futile attempt to smooth over a chasm that had just opened up. "Let's not make a scene. Celeste, you know you didn't mean it." He sounded more like he was excusing a child than confronting a malicious adult. His weakness, his complicity, twisted the knife deeper. Celeste, recovering her composure slightly, forced a contrite expression. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," she mumbled, her eyes darting away. I shouldn't have said that, but her tone lacked genuine remorse. It was the apology of someone caught, not someone truly sorry for their actions. She regretted the consequence, not the sentiment. "Lily, darling," I said, my voice gentle as I turned to my granddaughter, "why don't you go upstairs? Perhaps read a book, or watch some television. This is not for your ears." Lily looked at me, then at her parents, her relief palpable as she quickly slipped away. A ghost of her usual self. I watched her go, a fresh ache in my chest. This was not the legacy I wanted to leave her, this fractured, bitter family. With Lily gone, the tension in the room thickened, almost suffocating. Celeste, emboldened by David's attempts at mediation, seemed to find her voice again, though now it was tinged with a defensive self-righteousness. "You see, Eleanor," she began, adopting her familiar lecturing tone, "it's about principles. You might not understand, coming from your privileged background, but there's a moral imperative to redistribute wealth, to challenge entrenched power structures." My words, while perhaps blunt, came from a place of genuine concern for systemic injustice. She actually believed this. Or at least, she believed she could make me believe it. I met her gaze squarely. "Principles?" I asked, a faint smile playing on my lips that did not reach my eyes. "Is that what you call it? Because for years, these principles of yours seemed to align rather conveniently with my bank account. The principles that allowed you to accept the down payment on your house, the generous monthly allowances, the funding for your social impact projects that mysteriously never quite took off. Were those principles too, Celeste? Or just convenient conduits?" Celeste's face tightened. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "And let's be precise," I continued, my voice still dangerously calm. "You didn't say deserves to die alone. You said, going to die alone. A subtle but significant distinction, wouldn't you agree?" Her eyes, cold and unblinking, met mine. I said, "Going to die alone," she repeated. A chilling correction, not deserves to. There's a difference. The statement hung in the air, a stark confirmation of her premeditated cruelty, a testament to her calculated insensitivity. She hadn't accidentally wished me ill. She had coldly stated what she perceived as my inevitable fate, a fate she clearly found fitting. I stood up slowly, the movement deliberate, pulling my hand away from David's tentative grasp. He looked up at me, his face etched with a mixture of fear and regret. But it was too late. In that moment, surrounded by my family, I felt an immense, profound loneliness. I wasn't a mother, a grandmother, a person to them. I was merely a wallet, a source of funds, and now, a problem to be dealt with. The illusion had shattered completely, and I finally saw the truth in the gleaming shards. I was truly alone in this. The dinner from hell concluded not with apologies, but with a strained, awkward silence that I broke by simply standing and retreating to my room. David made a half-hearted attempt to follow, a mumbled, "Mom, please," but I waved him off with a gesture that conveyed utter finality. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing me in the quiet sanctuary of my bedroom. Yet the words Celeste had hurled at me continued to reverberate through my mind. Sleep was an impossibility. I lay in the darkness, the events of the evening replaying on a cruel, endless loop. But now, they were different. Celeste's venomous outburst had acted like a sudden, blinding flash, illuminating every past interaction, every seemingly innocent conversation, in a harsh, unforgiving light. For 3 years, since David and Celeste had married, I had viewed their requests, their declarations, their very presence, through the rose-tinted glasses of maternal love and hopeful family harmony. Now, those glasses were shattered. Every kind word from Celeste, every passionate speech about social injustice, every subtle critique of my comfortable life, all suddenly seemed imbued with a sinister undertone. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and seemingly unrelated, now clicked into place, forming a picture that was both horrifying and depressingly clear. My daughter-in-law wasn't just outspoken, she was a master manipulator, and I, Eleanor, had been her willing victim. Around 3 a.m, the restless churning of my thoughts became unbearable. I threw off the covers and padded silently down the hall to my home office. A small, almost clinical space, it was filled with the tools of my former career. Meticulously organized files, a powerful computer, and the faint, comforting scent of old paper and ink. Tonight, it would be the scene of a bitter reckoning. I fired up my computer and logged into my bank accounts. The numbers, I knew, wouldn't lie. With a grim determination, I began to comb through 3 years of transactions, cross-referencing them with my personal ledger and David's occasional vague requests. The digital statements scrolled endlessly, a growing tally of my generosity, now revealed as my folly. As dawn began to paint the sky with soft hues of gray and pink, a stark contrast to the darkness in my soul, I finished my audit. The final sum flashed on my screen, a number that made my breath catch in my throat. $67,000. $67,000 given to David and Celeste over 3 years, not including the value of the countless meals, holidays, and smaller gifts. It was an astonishing sum, far more than I had ever consciously realized. Each transaction, now viewed with brutal honesty, was a testament to Celeste's insidious genius. There was a clear, disturbing pattern. Every significant financial request had been cloaked in the language of social justice, disguised as a moral imperative rather than a personal need. It wasn't just about getting money. It was about making me feel obligated, guilty, and even noble for providing it. It was ideological blackmail, pure and simple. I remembered the conversation about Lily's education. "Mom, we really want Lily to have the best opportunities," David had started, his voice a familiar blend of earnestness and subtle pressure. But it was Celeste who had closed the deal. "It's not just about a good school, Eleanor," she'd argued, her voice impassioned. "It's about breaking cycles of systemic inequality. Public schools are so underfunded, a product of neoliberal policies that disproportionately affect marginalized communities. Sending Lily there would be passively endorsing a broken system. And just like that, her private school tuition, a hefty annual sum, was on my tab, presented as my contribution to a more equitable future. Then there was the car. Their aging sedan had broken down, requiring a $4,000 repair. David had called, sounding genuinely distressed. Celeste had followed up, not with a plea for help, but with a lecture. "We can't get a new car, Eleanor," she'd declared. "We refuse to support the predatory auto loan industry that exploits working-class families. But we need reliable transportation to do our volunteer work in underserved communities. It's a matter of practicality, but also of principle, against participating in exploitative financial systems." My check, of course, had followed. And their house. The down payment, a substantial sum, had been presented as a moral imperative. "We simply can't bring ourselves to rent from slumlords, Eleanor," Celeste had explained, painting a vivid picture of exploitative landlords and substandard housing. "It goes against everything we believe in. We need a stable, ethical home base to raise Lily and continue our activism." Again, I had paid, convinced I was helping them live by their values. Scrolling through old text messages, I saw it all now. Celeste's compliments were a meticulous trap. "Eleanor, your business acumen is truly inspiring. To build such wealth, it's incredible. Most people never achieve that level of success, especially women." Such messages, once perceived as genuine admiration, now reeked of calculated flattery, designed to induce guilt about my privilege and set the stage for the next financial request. Every expression of gratitude from her had been a preamble, a delicate string of pearls meant to adorn the next impending plea. "Thank you so much, Eleanor, for your generosity. It truly makes a difference in our ability to live according to our principles." The principles, of course, always required my money. As the sun fully rose, casting long shadows across my office, I felt a profound sense of isolation. Was this how other families operated? Was I merely a human ATM? A walking source of capital to be exploited under the guise of familial love and social conscience? The thought was sickening. My phone buzzed, startling me. It was a text from David. "Mom, I'm so sorry about last night. Celeste has been really stressed with all her volunteer work. She didn't mean any of it. Can we talk later?" Volunteer work. The words echoed in my mind. Celeste, volunteer work. How much did I actually know about it? It was always vague, always demanding, always used as an excuse for her mood or her need for my financial support. She spent long hours away, supposedly doing important community organizing or advocacy, but the details were always scarce, the organizations undefined. A cold knot formed in my stomach. A new resolve hardened within me. For 3 years, I had accepted her explanations, her narratives, her self-proclaimed righteousness. For 3 years, I had closed my eyes, wanting to believe in the beautiful family illusion, but no more. I would investigate. I would find out exactly what Celeste's volunteer work entailed. It was something I should have done years ago. With the bitter taste of David's inadequate apology still lingering, my resolve solidified. The vague platitudes about Celeste's volunteer work and stress were no longer acceptable. My fingers, still trembling slightly from the emotional upheaval of the night, flew across the keyboard. A simple Google search. That was where I would begin. Celeste Marie Johnson. Her social media profiles, meticulously curated, quickly appeared. I clicked on the first link, a platform she favored for its visual storytelling. My blood ran cold almost immediately. There, plastered across my screen, was a life that bore absolutely no resemblance to the image of a struggling, principled activist I had been funding. Photo after photo scrolled past, each one a fresh betrayal. Celeste at exclusive restaurants, their gourmet dishes artfully arranged. Celeste posing in front of high-end boutiques, clutching designer shopping bags, a gleaming Chanel purse, shoes from Manolo Blahnik. Celeste on exotic getaways, sipping cocktails on pristine beaches, skiing down snowy slopes, always impeccably dressed in clothes that screamed luxury, not thrift. Her captions, however, were a masterpiece of hypocrisy. "Just enjoying life's simple pleasures," one read, beneath a photo of her in a designer dress, holding a glass of champagne, overlooking a sapphire sea. Another, next to a close-up of a ridiculously expensive watch, declared, "Appreciating the abundance the universe provides." The simple pleasures and abundance I was providing, ironically, under the guise of supporting her fight against systemic injustice and predatory capitalism. As I delved deeper, the comments section beneath her posts became even more illuminating. Her friends, or perhaps just acquaintances, often expressed envy. "Celeste, how do you afford this on a volunteer salary? Spill your secrets," one gushed. Another chimed in, "Seriously, your life looks amazing. Wish I had your budget." The question, though veiled in admiration, was clear. How did she manage such a lavish lifestyle without a visible income? Celeste's replies were chillingly revealing. "Oh, you know," she'd type back, often with a winking emoji. "Let's just say I'm very good at resource management." Resource management. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. I was her resource. My wealth, my generosity, my maternal desire to help my son and his family, all of it had been meticulously managed by her, channeled into her own hedonistic pursuits. But the most damning comment, the one that made my stomach clench and bile rise in my throat, was a reply to a friend who had complained about their own stingy mother-in-law. Celeste had written, in a tone dripping with condescension, "My mother-in-law is so stingy. The key is education. Some people just need to learn about their social responsibility. You have to be patient, sow the seeds, and show them how their wealth can truly make a difference in the world." Wink emoji. The education of the wealthy. Her words echoed in my mind. A grotesque parody of the earnest discussions we'd had. All those lectures about privilege, about systemic inequality, about the moral imperative to share my wealth, had been nothing more than a calculated performance. A long, drawn-out indoctrination designed to loosen my purse strings and fund her extravagant life. My generosity wasn't supporting social justice. It was her personal shopping fund, disguised under the noble banner of activism. I cross-referenced her social media timeline with the transactions I'd painstakingly listed from my bank statements. The pattern was undeniable. A damning timeline of deceit. Every major luxury purchase she flaunted online, the designer bag, the exotic vacation, the expensive jewelry, aligned perfectly, almost to the day, with a significant financial request from me. The $4,000 car repair had mysteriously coincided with a new set of diamond earrings. The ethical down payment on their house had been followed by a post from a 5-star resort in Bali. One post, in particular, stood out. A photo of Celeste, glass of champagne in hand, gazing confidently into the camera, her face alight with triumph. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to play the long game. Patience and strategy always pay off." It wasn't a casual observation. It was a confession. A taunt. A celebration of her successful manipulation. Another friend had commented, "I wish I had your skills with older relatives." And Celeste's reply, "It's all about understanding psychology. Know what makes them tick, what they care about, and use it." I leaned back in my chair, physically sickened. The past 3 years of my life flashed before my eyes, not as a period of familial bonding, but as a meticulously orchestrated con game. My trust, my love for my son, my hope for a loving extended family, all of it had been exploited, twisted into a weapon against me. Celeste wasn't just a deceptive daughter-in-law. She was a master emotional manipulator, a parasite with a college degree and a talent for emotional extortion. The pain of betrayal was excruciating, but it was quickly being subsumed by a cold, unwavering fury. The illusion was gone, utterly and irrevocably shattered. There would be no second chances, no more excuses. With a firm hand, I navigated back to my online banking portal. Every automatic transfer, every recurring payment I had set up for David and Celeste was systematically located and canceled. The monthly allowance, the education fund, the discretionary emergency fund, all of it, severed with a few decisive clicks. This was my long game, and it was just beginning. After severing the financial lifelines, I settled into a waiting game. Experience had taught me that certain truths reveal themselves not through immediate confrontation, but through the quiet, inexorable passage of time. My 72-hour rule was typically for business deals, but I found it applied equally well to family dynamics when money was involved. I knew it wouldn't take long for the lack of funds to be noticed. Their lifestyle, funded entirely by my generosity, depended on those automatic transfers. Precisely 3 days later, the phone rang. It was David. His voice, usually calm and measured, was now tinged with an unmistakable edge of panic. "Mom, there's been a problem with the mortgage payment," he began, trying to sound casual, but failing spectacularly. "It bounced. I think there's been some kind of banking error with the transfer you usually make. Did you get a notification?" I was in my rose garden, pruning a particularly stubborn bush, enjoying the morning sun. The scent of damp earth and blooming petals filled the air, a stark contrast to the brewing storm. I held the phone to my ear, a small smile playing on my lips. "No, David," I replied, my voice steady, devoid of any hint of emotion. "There's no banking error. I canceled the transfers myself." A beat of stunned silence followed, punctuated only by the chirping of birds and the distant hum of traffic. Then, David's voice, higher now, a thin thread of confusion laced with genuine alarm, broke the quiet. You canceled them? Why, Mom? Why would you do that? Why would I continue to pay for a house?" I asked, my voice still even, in which I am apparently not welcome. Why would I fund a lifestyle where my presence is seen as an imposition and my very existence is mocked? I didn't need to elaborate. The memory of Celeste's words hung heavy in the air between us, unspoken but undeniably present. Another pause. This one longer, filled with David's ragged breathing. He was floundering, searching for an excuse, a way to mitigate the sudden, terrifying reality of their financial independence. "Mom, please," he finally managed, his voice a desperate plea. "We need to talk. Can we meet? Right away?" "Yes, we can," I agreed, my tone firm. "Lunch. Today. My usual spot, the Ivy. You can come alone, or you can bring Lily. But Celeste is not invited. This conversation is strictly between us." "Mom, you're scaring me," David confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Good," I responded, a quiet, almost dangerous edge to my voice. "It's about time someone in this family felt a little scared." I hung up before he could respond. My heart strangely calm. The first tremor had hit. True to my word, David arrived at the Ivy precisely at noon, Lily trailing behind him. My granddaughter, innocent and oblivious, brightened considerably at the sight of me. She bounced into the restaurant, her violin case clutched in one hand, her face a picture of youthful energy. "Grandma! Dad said we were meeting for a special lunch. I just had my violin lesson, and Miss Anya says I'm improving so much." She launched into a cheerful monologue about her latest piece, then seamlessly transitioned to discussing her school friends, and then, inevitably, the tough economy. My stomach tightened. Celeste's influence was insidious, even reaching Lily. "Mommy says sometimes grandparents have to make really hard choices," Lily explained, completely unaware of the irony, "and that we might need to learn to be more independent because the world is changing." It was a softened, child-friendly version of Celeste's educational rhetoric, already subtly poisoning Lily's perception of me. "Sweetheart," I interjected gently, "those are beautiful flowers by the fountain outside. Why don't you go pick a small bouquet for our table? And ask the waiter for a small glass of fresh apple juice while you're at it." Lily's eyes lit up, and she scampered off, eager for the small task. I needed to speak to David alone, without the innocent ears of my granddaughter absorbing any more of the toxic narrative. As Lily disappeared, David sank into the chair opposite me, looking utterly depleted. He was only 28, but the past few years, or perhaps just the past few days, had etched lines of worry around his eyes, making him look far older. His shoulders were slumped, his usual confident posture replaced by a defeated slump. He looked like a man carrying the weight of a monumental burden. And I knew exactly who that burden was. "David," I began, my voice quiet but firm, "how long has this been going on? How long has Celeste been turning you against me?" He flinched, then immediately went on the defensive, his eyes darting around the elegant dining room as if searching for an escape route. "Mom, no, it's not like that. Celeste hasn't been turning me against you. We have different perspectives. She's very passionate about social justice, about the generational wealth gap, about economic advantages some people have over others." "Stop!" I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Don't recite Celeste's talking points to me. I've heard them all before, and frankly, I'm tired of them. They are nothing but an elaborate smokescreen for her own greed. I saw her social media, David. I know exactly what she's been saying behind my back, and how she's been spending my money." David visibly winced. "Mom, that's private. And you don't understand the pressures we face. The cost of living is so high, and you? You never had to deal with student loans. With starting from scratch? Student loans?" I interjected, a cold, humorless laugh escaping my lips. "David, your father and I worked 2 jobs to put ourselves through college. We paid off our student loans the hard way, and then we worked harder still to build the life you now so casually dismiss as economic advantage. That's another one of Celeste's lies, isn't it? That I just inherited everything, or that I never struggled? That I simply floated through life on a cloud of unearned privilege?" The depth of her insidious manipulation, even twisting my own history, was truly staggering. This is just part 5 of a much larger story, and believe me, it only gets more intense from here. If you're finding yourself gripped by this tale of betrayal and discovery, please do us a huge favor. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single part of Eleanor's journey. let's get back to it. The sting of David's implication that my success was unearned, my life without struggle, cut deep. David, I said, my voice unwavering. Your father, God rest his soul. And I started with nothing. We worked 2 jobs each, put ourselves through night school, and lived in a tiny apartment for years, saving every penny. We paid off our student loans with blood, sweat, and tears, not with a magic wand. The down payment on our first home, the one you grew up in, came from every overtime shift and every skipped luxury. We built what we have, piece by painful piece, out of sheer grit and determination. So don't you dare tell me I didn't deal with student loans or starting from scratch. David's face, which had been pale with apprehension, now went stark white. The color drained from his cheeks as the full weight of Celeste's fabrication hit him. He blinked, a realization dawning in his eyes that was both heartbreaking and infuriating to witness. He had believed her. He had believed that version of my life, the one where I was born into privilege, untouched by hardship. She built a narrative, David, I continued, pressing on, where I was the villain, the cold, unfeeling capitalist, and you two were the victims, struggling against a system I supposedly embodied. It was a convenient fiction to justify her endless demands for money. David swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on the tablecloth. She said you judged her, Mom, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. She said you always looked down on her choices, her clothes, her spending, even when you were giving us money. She said your generosity was always tinged with disapproval. My eyes narrowed. If I judged her spending, David, why on earth would I contribute to it? Why would I give her thousands of dollars to fund a lifestyle I supposedly disapproved of? Doesn't that sound illogical to you? He looked up then, his brow furrowed in confusion. She said it was guilt money, that you felt guilty for being emotionally distant, for not being as present as other mothers, that you tried to make up for it with money. A sharp, incredulous laugh escaped my lips. Guilt money? My love? My efforts to build a warm, supportive family? My unwavering financial support? All twisted into evidence of my maternal failure? The sheer audacity, the intricate web of lies Celeste had woven, was breathtaking. She had turned every positive aspect of my relationship with David into a negative, every act of love into a source of her supposed victimhood. It was a level of manipulation I hadn't imagined possible. It was truly sophisticated. David, I said, my voice softer now, sensing his internal struggle. What do you think? Not what Celeste told you to think, not what she wants you to believe. What do you, David, your own son, truly believe about your mother? He ran a hand through his hair, looking utterly lost. I think I'm confused, Mom. I don't know what to believe anymore. Good, I said again, though this time the word was laced with a different kind of resolve. Confusion is the first step to clarity, and I'm here to help you get clear. With that, I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop, placing it carefully on the table between us. I turned the screen towards him, revealing the very social media profiles I had painstakingly reviewed that morning. This is your wife's public profile, David, I stated, my finger hovering over a particularly egregious post. And these are the receipts. I scrolled through, showing him image after image of Celeste's lavish life, side by side with the dates of my financial transfers. Here, I paused on a photo of Celeste beaming, clutching a sleek, $2,000 designer handbag. This photo was posted the very same week Celeste called me, weeping, about needing funds for Lily's school fees, claiming you both were struggling to make ends meet. David stared at the screen, his face slowly transforming. Disbelief warred with a dawning horror. No, Mom, wait, he stammered, trying to rationalize, to cling to the narrative Celeste had constructed. That bag, that was a gift. From her mother. Before she passed away. Oh, really? I raised an eyebrow, scrolling to a more recent post. And what about this one? This other $2,000 bag, purchased last month? Was that also a posthumous gift? Or this trip to the Hamptons, paid for the day after I transferred money for your supposed housing crisis? I didn't need to say more. The timeline, the sheer volume of evidence, spoke for itself. The desperate justifications died on his lips. David's eyes, fixed on the screen, glazed over. The last vestiges of his denial crumbled, revealing the raw shock beneath. He saw it now, the undeniable pattern, the intricate web of lies. His wife, the woman he loved, the mother of his child, was a fraud. And finally, I said, pointing to the chilling comments I had found, her advice on managing older relatives, her open boasting about understanding psychology to get what she wants. She wasn't just taking my money, David. She was enjoying the game. She was playing you, playing me, playing our entire family. David finally buried his face in his hands, a guttural groan escaping his lips. Oh God, Mom. What have I done? My heart ached for him, for the devastation he was experiencing. I reached across the table and gently placed my hand on his arm. You fell in love, David, I said softly. You fell in love with someone who wasn't who she pretended to be. That's not your fault. Just then, Lily skipped back to the table, her small hands clutching a vibrant bouquet of wildflowers. Grandma! Look! I got you the prettiest ones, she chirped, oblivious to the silent storm raging between her mother and grandmother. I looked at her innocent face, then at David's tormented one. This wasn't just about me and my money anymore. This was about protecting Lily from learning that love could be a tool for manipulation, that family could be a stage for deceit. David lifted his head, his eyes red-rimmed but resolute. What do we do now, Mom? I squeezed his arm, my gaze firm. We find out exactly who Celeste really is, David. Every last detail. And then, I paused, looking into my son's eyes. We decide what kind of family we want to be. After my lunch with David, I spent the next week living like a spy in my own life. While David began the slow, painful process of accepting Celeste's betrayal, I watched, I listened, and I observed. Every interaction with Celeste, every snippet of conversation, was now filtered through the lens of suspicion. Her vague excuses for her absences, her ever-present phone calls, the subtle shifts in her demeanor, inconsistencies that I had once dismissed as quirks of her personality now screamed of deception. I maintained a cordial, albeit distant, facade, allowing her to believe her manipulations were still effective, all while gathering intelligence. It was my nosy, but ultimately well-meaning, neighbor, Beverly, who provided the next critical piece of the puzzle. Beverly, a spry woman in her early 70s, with an uncanny knack for knowing everyone's business, cornered me one sunny afternoon as I was retrieving my mail. Eleanor, dear, she began, her voice a stage whisper that carried perfectly across our manicured lawns. I don't mean to pry, but I saw your daughter-in-law yesterday. She was quite agitated, shouting into her phone right outside your house. I only mention it because it seemed rather personal. My heart gave a little jolt. Oh? I prompted, feigning casual interest, my internal alarm bells already clanging. Was everything all right? Beverly leaned in conspiratorially. Well, she didn't look all right. And she was saying some rather unpleasant things. I thought, my, what a way to speak about your mother-in-law. The old bat, I repeated, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Celeste's casual cruelty was unsurprising, but what Beverly said next chilled me to the bone. And then she said something about you getting suspicious and needing to speed up the timeline. Beverly continued, her brow furrowed with concern. And the most unsettling thing, Eleanor, she said, it won't be a problem much longer. Gave me goosebumps. It did. It won't be a problem much longer. The words echoed in my mind, a sinister promise. My feigned frailty, my deliberate silence, my canceled transfers. Celeste wasn't just annoyed, she felt threatened, and speeding up the timeline meant she had a plan to remove the problem. And there was another name, Beverly mused, tapping a finger on her chin. Diana. She kept saying, Diana, and then Lily's name several times. Like they were connected somehow. Very strange. Diana. Lily. A timeline to speed up. Won't be a problem much longer. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Celeste wasn't just after my money. She had a sinister backup plan, one that involved not just my assets but Lily's future, and a mysterious figure named Diana. It sounded less like financial manipulation and more like a carefully constructed plot. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. That evening, I called David. My voice was deliberately soft, a little shaky, conveying a subtle weariness. David, dear, I'm not feeling particularly well tonight. Just a bit under the weather, but it's got me thinking. I'd really like to discuss some family matters, my affairs perhaps. While I'm still thinking clearly, I injected just enough vulnerability to make it seem urgent, but not so much as to raise alarm. I knew Celeste would be listening. The next afternoon, Celeste and David arrived at my house. Celeste was dressed impeccably in an expensive new dress, her hair perfectly styled. She exuded a confident, almost triumphant aura, as if she knew she was about to seal a victory. David, on the other hand, looked apprehensive, glancing nervously between his wife and me. I met them in the living room, a soft blanket draped over my shoulders, moving a little slower than usual. I played the part of the tired, aging woman, leaning heavily on the arm of my favorite armchair, my voice a little softer, a little more fragile. "Thank you for coming," I said, offering a weak smile. "I know it's a bit sudden, but these things weigh on one's mind as one gets older." David murmured a concerned reply, but Celeste's eyes, I noticed, gleamed with an almost predatory interest. She saw an opening, a chance to solidify her control. "I wanted to talk about my will," I stated, dropping the bombshell with deliberate slowness. David shifted uncomfortably, clearly reluctant to discuss such a morbid topic, but Celeste straightened in her seat, her gaze sharpening, her thinly veiled greed now almost palpable. "Of course, Eleanor," Celeste purred, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's so important to have one's affairs in order. We're here to help in any way we can." "Yes," I continued, meeting her gaze steadily. "I want to set up a robust trust fund specifically for her, to ensure she has everything she needs, and the house, of course. I want to put it in a trust for her as well, to safeguard her future." Celeste's smile widened, her eyes gleaming. "That's such a wonderful idea, Eleanor. Lily means the world to us. As her parents, David and I would of course be the primary beneficiaries and guardians of that trust. We'd ensure every penny is managed responsibly for her benefit." Her words were smooth, practiced, already positioning herself to control my assets through Lily. I nodded slowly, as if considering her words. Then, I casually interjected the trap. "It reminds me of a conversation I overheard recently. Someone mentioned a Diana. Do you happen to know anyone by that name? Celeste? Someone perhaps involved in financial planning for families?" Celeste's face, which had been radiating confident smugness only moments before, went utterly white. Her eyes darted to David, then back to me, wide with panic. Her carefully constructed composure shattered. "Diana?" she stammered, her voice jumping an octave. I don't know any Diana. Why do you ask? Is that someone you're considering for your will?" The lie was clumsy, transparent. David, who had been listening with growing discomfort, noticed the sudden shift. He looked at Celeste, then at me, his brow furrowing with a fresh wave of suspicion. Her panic was undeniable. In that moment, I knew. Beverly's warning, the timeline, the name Diana, Lily's future. It was all connected. Celeste wasn't just interested in my money. She had a dangerous, elaborate backup plan, a looming threat that involved Lily, Diana, and a carefully choreographed scheme to remove me from the picture. The carefully planned encounter with Celeste, culminating in her panicked reaction to the name Diana, removed any lingering doubt. This was no longer just about financial manipulation or hurt feelings. This was a direct, palpable threat. The casual mention of speeding up the timeline and it won't be a problem much longer echoed chillingly in my mind. I needed help, professional help, and I needed it immediately. That same evening, I made an unprecedented decision. I called a private investigator. Leo Miller came highly recommended, a former police detective who had transitioned to private practice. We agreed to meet the following morning at a discreet coffee shop a few towns over. When I sat across from him, sipping a lukewarm latte, I laid out my fears with a stark honesty that surprised even myself. "Mr. Miller," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I believe someone is planning to hurt me, and I believe it involves my daughter-in-law, Celeste, and my granddaughter, Lily." I recounted the entire saga. Celeste's initial outburst, my discovery of her lavish social media, the cancelled transfers, Beverly's disturbing overheard conversation, and Celeste's panicked response to the name Diana. Leo Miller was a man of quiet competence. His eyes, though keen, held no judgment. He listened patiently, taking sparse notes, his expression unreadable. His calm demeanor was a balm to my frayed nerves, inspiring a confidence I desperately needed. He asked pertinent questions, probing for details I hadn't considered. "What do you know about Celeste's life before she met your son?" he asked, his voice low. The question hung in the air, revealing a startling void. "Very little, actually," I admitted, a fresh wave of shame washing over me. She always kept it vague, said she came from a challenging background, but never elaborated. I just assumed she was private. Perhaps even a bit embarrassed. Another one of her carefully constructed walls, designed to prevent scrutiny. Leo nodded, a knowing glint in his eyes. "People like this," he said, choosing his words carefully, "often have very little verifiable past. They build a persona, a narrative, designed to elicit sympathy and deflect questions. From what you've described, Miss Eleanor, Celeste fits the profile of a financial predator who targets families." The term financial predator hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was harsh, unforgiving, and terrifyingly accurate. It stripped away all the pretense, all the emotional manipulation, and laid bare the cold, calculating truth of Celeste's nature. My daughter-in-law, the woman who had married my son and borne my granddaughter, was a predator. The realization left me breathless. "There's always a trail, Miss Eleanor," Leo assured me, seeing the distress in my face. "It might be buried deep, but it's there. Give me a week. I'll uncover Celeste's past activities, her financial history, and any connections to this Diana you mentioned." As I left the coffee shop and drove back to my perfectly manicured, quiet neighborhood, my perception of everything had shifted. My beautiful, safe home suddenly felt vulnerable. The familiar streets, once a source of comfort, now seemed shadowed by a looming threat. Celeste's words, "Speed up the timeline, won't be a problem much longer," played on a relentless loop in my mind. I had a grim premonition. She wouldn't give me a full week. She would act sooner. 6 days later, my phone rang. It was Leo Miller. His voice, usually so calm and measured, held a grim urgency that sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. "Miss Eleanor," he said, without preamble, "I need you and David to meet me. As soon as possible. My office. And tell David not to breathe a word of this to Celeste. Absolute secrecy is paramount." My premonition had been correct. I immediately called David. His phone rang several times before he picked up, his voice sounding harried. "Mom? Is everything all right? Celeste is furious about the money being cut off. She's been—" "David, listen to me," I interrupted, my voice sharp with urgency. "This is not about the money right now. This is serious. I need you to meet me. Leo Miller's office, near the courthouse. Now. And David, I need you to promise me, on Lily's life, that you will not say a single word of this to Celeste. Not one word. Do you understand?" The gravity in my voice must have penetrated through his distracted state. "Mom? What's going on? You're scaring me again." "Just come," I insisted, And remember your promise. I hung up, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. We met Leo in his nondescript office, nestled in a quiet building near the city courthouse. David arrived looking disheveled, his face a mixture of confusion and worry. He glanced at me, then at Leo, clearly unnerved by the secrecy and the setting. Leo, ever the professional, had a folder laid out on his desk. He motioned for us to sit. He looked at David, then at me, his expression somber. "This is going to be difficult," he began, his voice low and steady. "What I'm about to show you, it will be shocking. But you need to see it. All of it." The air in the small office crackled with unspoken tension, heavy with the weight of impending, devastating revelations. Leo Miller opened the folder, the crisp sound echoing in the tense silence of his office. "Miss Eleanor David," he began, his voice devoid of emotion. "What I'm about to show you confirms your worst fears and, I suspect, will deepen them considerably." He slid a photograph across the desk. It was an old, faded picture of a beaming Celeste, much younger, arm in arm with an elderly man. The man, a frail-looking widower, looked genuinely happy. "This is Charles Thompson," Leo explained. 78 years old, recently widowed. "And this is your wife, David." Though back then, she went by the name Wendy Hayes. David stared at the photo, then back at Leo, his face a mask of utter bewilderment. "No, that's impossible," he choked out. "Celeste was never married before me, and her name isn't Wendy Hayes. She wasn't married to Mr. Thompson, David," Leo clarified, his gaze steady. "She was his caregiver, employed using falsified references. Charles Thompson died just a few months after this photo was taken, leaving everything, a substantial sum of $400,000 and his house, to Wendy Hayes. She sold the house almost immediately after the will was executed. A cold wave washed over me. This wasn't just opportunism. It was a calculated, predatory act," Leo continued, methodically laying out evidence. "And this wasn't an isolated incident. My team found similar patterns in 2 other states, different names, different cities, but the same M.O. Elderly, vulnerable individuals, quickly befriended, isolated from family, and then their assets drained or willed to Wendy Hayes, or Gwendolyn Price, or Celeste Johnson." He pushed another document across the table. A mugshot. The face was undeniably Celeste's, but the eyes were hard, devoid of the warmth she usually manufactured. "Her real name, David, is Gwendolyn Price. She's 31. She has a criminal record for fraud and identity theft in 2 different states. She's been wanted by authorities for questioning in several suspicious death cases related to her caregiver work, though nothing was ever formally proven." "Impossible!" David's anguished cry ripped through the silence, a raw, primal scream of disbelief. His face was contorted in pain, the reality of marrying a convicted criminal and con artist crashing down on him. My wife is a criminal?" He looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to deny it, to tell him this was all a terrible mistake. But I could only meet his gaze with a look of profound sorrow. Leo then pulled up a different set of social media profiles. "The profiles you found, Miss Eleanor, were her public-facing, curated persona. This is her actual social media, the one she uses with her accomplices, her real friends." He scrolled through posts that chronicled a life of reckless spending, luxury items, and exotic trips, all occurring simultaneously with her struggling activist narrative to us. There were photos of her with another younger woman, posing with stacks of cash. "This shows a sophisticated, long-term operation. Your family, Miss Eleanor, was just one of her many targets." "Who's Diana?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, dreading the answer. Leo tapped a photo of Celeste with the other woman. "This is Victoria Price, Celeste's younger sister, the Diana Beverly overheard. They operate together. They call them operations." "Operations?" David echoed, his voice hoarse. "They target vulnerable individuals," Leo explained, his voice grim. "Build dependency, gain trust, and systematically drain assets. Sometimes through caregiver scams, sometimes through marriage, sometimes through outright fraud and identity theft. Your son, David, a single father with a wealthy mother, was a perfect target for Celeste. It provided immediate access to funds and a longer-term plan for an inheritance. He paused, taking a breath. But the most concerning part, the reason for the urgency of this meeting, is Lily. My investigation indicates they're planning to accelerate their timeline, not just for financial reasons, but to gain legal custody of Lily. My blood ran cold. Custody of Lily? Why? To fully control your assets, Miss Eleanor, Leo stated bluntly. And, to eliminate obstacles. They have been meticulously documenting evidence to have you declared mentally incompetent and David an unfit father. Celeste has photos from your medicine cabinet, notes on supposed memory lapses. She's building a case that you're no longer capable of managing your affairs or caring for Lily, and that David, under stress, is an unstable parent, prone to neglectful parenting. David gasped, his face crumbling. She's been setting me up? Yes, David, Leo confirmed. And she's been subtly manipulating Lily. Children are often unwitting pawns in these situations, fed a narrative that makes them distrustful of the target parents, making it easier for the predator to gain their loyalty, and eventually, legal control. A quiet, burning rage solidified within me. I want her gone, I stated, my voice low, firm. I want her out of our lives, out of Lily's life, and behind bars where she belongs. Divorce would be messy, Miss Eleanor, Leo warned. Celeste would use Lily as leverage, drag it out for years, demanding alimony and child support, trying to bleed you both dry, and with her history of fraud, proving it in court would be a long, drawn-out battle. I sat in silence for a moment, processing the enormity of the betrayal, the chilling scope of their plan. Then, a new idea sparked. A dangerous, audacious thought that brought a strange sense of calm. What if, I mused, looking at Leo, then at David, what if we let her think she's winning? And so, together, we began to devise a counterplan. A risky but foolproof strategy to ensnare Celeste, to expose her for the predator she was, and ensure she would never hurt another family again. David looked at me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I was so stupid. No, David, I said, reaching across the table to hold his hand. You weren't stupid. You were targeted. She is a master of deception. She fooled all of us. But no more. We sat there, my son and I, grappling with the horrifying truth that the woman who had shared our lives, who had borne our child, was a complete stranger, a dangerous criminal who had woven a tapestry of lies around us. We knew then that we couldn't tell Lily anything yet. Not a word. Her innocence was too fragile, and any accidental leak could jeopardize our plan. The real game, a game for Lily's future and our very safety, was about to begin. And this time, I, Eleanor, would be controlling the rules. The plan was set. The elegant trap hinged on Celeste's greed and her belief that she was the smartest person in the room. I called her, my voice deliberately wavering, feigning a fresh wave of confusion about my will and financial decisions. Celeste, dear, I began, putting on my most frail, elderly persona. I'm just so overwhelmed with all these papers. My memory isn't what it used to be. I don't know what to do about my will, or how to manage Lily's trust. It's all so much. Celeste took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. I could almost hear the triumphant smirk in her voice, barely concealed by a veneer of false concern. Oh, Eleanor, don't you worry your head about a thing, she cooed, her excitement almost palpable. David and I are here for you. I can absolutely help you manage your affairs. It's what family does. Then came the hook I was waiting for. Perhaps, she suggested, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, we could arrange for a power of attorney? That way, I can handle everything smoothly for you, ensuring your wishes for Lily are perfectly executed without all this stress on you. This was it. the exact leverage she'd been seeking to gain full control. I feigned relief. "Oh, Celeste, would you? That would be such a blessing. I just feel so muddled lately." "Yes, let's do that. Can you come over tomorrow afternoon? I'll have tea ready." The next day, my house was a stage, meticulously prepared. Leo Miller and 2 plainclothes police detectives were hidden in the kitchen, ready to act. David was upstairs with Lily, keeping her occupied and out of sight. I was in the living room, a stack of innocuous papers on the coffee table, a cup of herbal tea cooling beside me, playing the part of the confused, vulnerable elder to perfection. Celeste arrived promptly, not alone. Trailing behind her was a younger woman, introduced as Diana Roberts, a legal assistant who Celeste claimed was there to expedite the paperwork. It was Victoria Price, her sister, just as Leo had predicted. Victoria, a colder, more overtly calculating version of Celeste, carried a briefcase. Victoria immediately pulled out a stack of official-looking documents, all designed to transfer full financial and legal control to Celeste. She placed a pen in front of me, pointing to the signature lines. "Just sign here, Eleanor," she instructed, her voice brisk and dismissive. "And here. It's all straightforward. No need for a lawyer. Celeste will ensure everything is handled properly." I nodded slowly, picking up the pen, my hand trembling just enough to sell the act. I pretended to read the convoluted clauses, squinting and muttering confused questions, lulling them further into their false sense of security. "This part about full discretionary power? Does that mean I can't change my mind later, dear?" I asked, my voice thin. Celeste waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, it's just standard legal jargon, Eleanor. Don't worry about it. It just means I can make sure your money goes where you want it to go, without you having to stress." Victoria leaned forward, an impatient glint in her eye. "Just sign, Eleanor. We have other appointments." I picked up the pen again, my gaze flicking between Celeste and Victoria. A slow, chilling smile spread across my face. "How long have you two been running this scam together, Gwendolyn?" I asked, my voice suddenly clear, strong, and utterly devoid of confusion. Celeste's smug expression instantly vanished. Her jaw dropped. Victoria froze. "And by the way," I added, my voice cutting through the sudden silence, "Frank Kowalski sends his regards." Frank Kowalski was Charles Thompson's real name, a detail only Leo had uncovered. The recognition in their eyes was immediate, profound, and terrifying. Just then, Leo Miller stepped out from the kitchen, his phone held aloft, playing an audio recording. Celeste's voice, unmistakable, filled the room. "Get the power of attorney, then we can have her declared incompetent. And that fool David, he's so stressed. We can easily make a case for neglectful parenting. Then Lily's ours, and all her grandmother's assets too." The kitchen door swung open wider, revealing 2 police detectives, their badges glinting, followed by David, his face pale but resolute, holding a bewildered Lily by the hand. Celeste's face turned to absolute horror, her carefully constructed persona crumbling. "Mommy Celeste, why is everyone so angry?" Lily asked, her innocent voice cutting through the tension. David stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Celeste, no longer seeing the woman he loved, but the monster she truly was. "We're protecting my daughter, Lily, and my mother," he declared, his voice firm, unwavering. One of the detectives stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Celeste. "Gwendolyn Price, you are under arrest for fraud, elder abuse, and attempted grand larceny." He then looked at me. "And by the way, Miss Eleanor, you've been wearing a wire. We have everything." My voice, now completely steady, filled the room as I laid out the full extent of Leo's investigation, detailing Gwendolyn Price's true identity, her criminal record, her previous victims, and the meticulous plan she and Victoria had concocted. Celeste's mask finally shattered completely. Her face contorted into a mask of pure venom. "Because your precious grandmother," she hissed, her voice dripping with hatred, "is a vindictive old witch who wouldn't know real love if it slapped her in the face. You think you've won, But you're still going to die alone, Eleanor. As the detectives cuffed Gwendolyn Price, Victoria made a desperate dash for the front door. But a second detective, positioned just outside, apprehended her instantly. The house, usually so warm and welcoming, now felt empty, scarred by the exposure of such evil. In the aftermath, the silence was deafening. David held Lily tightly, both of them processing the devastating events. Lily, still confused, looked up at David. "Was Mommy Celeste really bad?" she asked, her voice small. "Mommy Celeste was very sick in her heart, sweetheart," I explained gently, wiping away a tear. "And she told a lot of lies." Then Lily turned to me, her blue eyes wide. "Grandma," she whispered, "are you really going to die alone?" The question, so innocent yet so profound, broke me. Tears welled in my eyes, but this time, they were tears of relief, of love. I pulled Lily into a hug, David joining us, forming a protective circle. "No, sweetheart," I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm not alone. I have you. And I have your daddy. I have more love than I ever thought possible." 6 months later, justice was served. Gwendolyn Price received an 8-year prison sentence for elder abuse, fraud, and attempted manipulation of a will. Victoria Price received 6 years for her role as an accomplice. The house was finally put into a trust for Lily, and my finances were secure. One evening, David, stronger and more independent than I had ever seen him, asked me, "Mom, do you ever regret it? Not just paying her off? Not avoiding all this pain?" I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "No, David," I said. "I don't regret it for a second, because the real victory isn't about money. It's about protecting others from people like her. It's about teaching Lily what real love means, not what manipulation looks like. It's about reclaiming our family, not letting a predator destroy it." I felt completely free, surrounded by the genuine love of my son and granddaughter. Celeste's final curse, her hissed promise that I would die alone, faded into the background. I was not alone. I was surrounded by light, by truth, and by a love that no amount of manipulation could ever diminish. Even Beverly, my always observing neighbor, gave me a knowing nod one day. "Some people," she said, "need to learn that kindness isn't the same as weakness," and I truly had.